This is the Wildcat, where we talk college and professional sports around Minnesota and North Dakota. Coming up, we sit down with Larry Scott and Morgan Lubin.
Watch SU TV News on Cable One. Produced by students of Bison Information Network, we promise to bring you all the latest news and sports from the campus of North Dakota State University. Watch SU TV News on Cable One Channel 14. Brought to you in part by Shields and Stop and Go.
Welcome back. I'm joined now by Larry Scott, former Dragon Sports Information Director. Larry, football, they finally got a win a couple weeks ago. Since last time we talked, they've played against Duluth, and then they had that win 2 weeks ago versus Crookston, and then they lost at home versus Mary.
Yeah, it's been kind of an interesting ride, Jake. A little up and down, a little inconsistent at times, but those kind of uneven performances are to be expected, I think, of a team so young. But as you mentioned, we went up to Minnesota Duluth and played quite well up there. Then came home and really, I think, took a step backwards against Northern State. Not a particularly good game. And then we got the win, though, against Minnesota Crookston. So that was pretty satisfying. Last weekend, the Dragons were out and lost at the University of Mary. But just one win, 1-7 so far, 3 games remaining. But there are reasons for those that are concerned about Dragon football, I think, to be excited about the future. Again, this is a team stocked with so many freshmen. All the defensive backs are freshmen. All the quarterbacks are freshmen. Wow. And even most of the offensive line is composed of freshmen. So obviously there's a learning curve there going on. But those concerned about Dragon football, I think that there's progress being made. And to be honest, a lot of people are pretty excited about next year. But there's work to be done. Not done yet this year. 3 more home games.
Taking a closer look with that game against Crookston, it was kind of close through the third quarter. Then your defense dominated in the fourth quarter. But in that game, Zane Medhaug did a lot of the majority of the running, 124 yards and a touchdown. Yeah,
I don't think you can build a winning football program without at least a modest running game. And earlier in the year, we were having difficulty running the ball at all. And part of that, I think, goes back certainly to the inexperience and maybe the size. But as the season's gone on, I think the experience gained by the offensive line has helped. And then the young backs, but particularly Medhaug had a great game, really stepped up. That was our best running game of the year. And that was a major part, I think, of that victory. Being able to move the ball, and that certainly opens up things for your passing game. Now, the irony, he filled in for Brandon Shell, who was hurt and missed that game. Then Medhaug missed the next game. And so we hope to have him back this week. But he certainly had a great relief role against Minnesota Crookston. That was terrific.
If both of those running backs could get going, you could stand a great chance at winning some games. Shell is leading in the yards with 265 this season. Medhaug does have the 2 touchdowns. They have fairly similar running styles, and they can really get those yards.
Yeah, and admittedly, those numbers are pretty modest. We certainly want to run the ball better and more effectively, and we will in the future. But it is what it is right now. But it's not lack of effort of those young guys. And one good thing is they're a little bit interchangeable, and obviously we've needed both of them. But if we're going to have some success on Saturday against Minot State and the remaining games that are left on their schedule, certainly it's imperative that we run the ball a little bit better.
Now, Jake Hodge has come forth as the starting quarterback day to day. He went 12 for 22, 161 yards, a passing touchdown, and a rushing touchdown in that victory. He's really come into his own this season, 6 touchdowns and 6 interceptions.
Yeah, I think Jake is certainly one of the reasons that Dragon fans are optimistic about the future. Obviously, I think we feel that the quarterback situation is in good hands. At the beginning of the year, Miles Montplaisir, who had the great prep career at Fargo Shanley, began the year as a quarterback, and then eventually Jake took over as a starting quarterback. Now, they're both freshmen, and Miles will have a role in our program. Right now, he's a backup quarterback, and we'll get a kind of a serious trial as a wide receiver, too. So the Dragons certainly aren't done with Miles, and he's not done with the Dragons. But right now, Hodge is kind of the man, the trigger man, and he's really improved dramatically. He's got a good arm and can scramble. He's got a lot of moxie back there for just a freshman. Obviously, again, he's learning a great deal as a first-year starter. And then surrounded by mostly young and other inexperienced players. I mean, it's asking quite a bit of a young guy, but we feel good about him. The funny thing about him, I think people look at him and they know that he's quite a prospect. Well, what happened in high school, as a junior, he kind of split time between a wide receiver and quarterback, and as a senior, he was hurt virtually the whole year, which meant he kind of vanished on the recruiting screen of a lot of people. But our people had been on him, and so maybe that's one reason it helped us to get him in honesty. But we like him, and he's got potential, and I think he's going to be a fine player. And he's done a lot of good things already.
You mentioned he was surrounded by a lot of youth. His favorite target is Adam Jiskra, another freshman. He has over 400 yards receiving this year, 4 touchdowns. He has come out as your obvious number one receiver.
Yeah, he has been all year. He's been, and now, of course, he's targeted a little bit more, and I believe he's still our leading receiver numbers-wise. But another young guy, Tyler Rivard, out of, again, Chanley High School, has been kind of a slot receiver for us, and Jake has found him a lot lately. So those two are probably our primary receivers. And then we'll also look to one of our tight ends, Wade Youngbloom, and yes, that's another freshman. So there's lots of freshmen, but feel particularly good about Jiskra and Rivard. You know, very active, competitive young guys, and they find the ability to find a seam, get open, and then be able to turn into something after the catch. So we think the receiving core right now is in pretty good hands.
You guys take on Minot State this weekend. They're 2-6, just one game ahead of you guys. Matching them up, they average 18 points per game. You guys average 14. Their quarterback has thrown 15 interceptions this season. So.
Yeah, we haven't played them for a long time. And the last time we played them, they had a quarterback named Randy Hedberg, and that's a long time ago, but somebody might remember it. He ended up playing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But he's not going to be there this weekend. We know that. And we don't know a lot about him because they're brand new to our league. First time, again, since 1977 that we've played them. So we do know that they've struggled a little bit as well. And certainly I know our players and coaches are very anxious about this game. They've kind of looked forward to this thing for a while. I really think sometimes, you know, you look at a team like the Dragons with a record like that, but sometimes when you're so young and inexperienced and you are getting better every week, they really don't get disheartened. They lose a game and there's another game to play. Other teams that may have had some higher hopes and, you know, they begin to struggle a little bit. We'll have Bemidji in a couple weeks. That's a team that might be descending a little bit because things are starting to sour there a little bit. And so we certainly have no fears about the emotional readiness of our team the rest of the year. We may not be good enough, that could happen, but you know, mentally they'll be ready to play starting Saturday against Minot, and again, we're very anxious for that game.
And like I said, Minot, 15 interceptions thrown by their quarterbacks. In that win against Crookston, you guys returned an interception and a fumble for a touchdown. So defense might bring you guys out ahead in that game.
Yeah, and our defense played well last week. We had kind of an odd thing happen when we're playing the University of Mary. They have a very talented quarterback. Craig Bagnell hadn't played in 3 games since he'd been hurt, and they had lost all 3. And he came back and was ready for us. Very athletic young guy, and he was probably the difference in the game. Although our defense did very well, we had some missed snaps that really hurt us on offense, but we only gave up 1 safety in the second half, so the defense is getting better.
Now looking at the standings, you guys are sitting towards the bottom, but you do get to play Minot State and Bemidji State and maybe move up a little bit in the standings.
Yeah, you know, it'd be fun to, you know, to climb up a little bit this year again. I think really, and nobody wants to talk publicly about it, but I think the focus is on the future. I think people are looking ahead. You don't want to tell that to the seniors because the few that we have, I mean, you know, this is their last shot, and we would love nothing better to add a win or 2 in what remains of this season. But for a lot of people, they are very anxious. I know the off season is going to be kind of exciting, and when you have that many young people and that few seniors, you know, I think there's every reason to think, you know, better days lie ahead. But it would be fun to get them and, you know, maybe pick off a couple wins and bump up.
I could see it happening. Yeah. Sticking with the youth, in soccer, you guys are also very youthful. That seems to be the theme of Dragon Athletics lately. The team is 3-9-1. They've lost their last 3 games, but they do have 2 more games left to try and get things together and end the season.
Yeah, they have a couple, and they'll close it out at Sunday. I think it's Mary that they have at home over at MSU on the Alec Nemzik pitch, I guess we would call it. But yeah, it has been at times a struggle. Again, it's a pretty young team for Coach Raleigh Belloc, and they're, you know, they've had a lot of tough losses. Soccer is really emotionally kind of a draining game. It seems you get so close to the doorstep of a win, you know. and either you can't finish it or something. And a lot of that is, finding those great scores are hard to find. And Aaron Nyberg's done a good job for the Dragons, but they need a little bit more help. And defensively, they're getting a little bit better. But it has been at times kind of an exasperating year, and hopefully that would finish with a good note, especially next Sunday at home.
You mentioned Erin Nyberg, her as well as Isabel Nyman. They lead the team in scoring. Nyberg with 7 goals, Nyman with 5. They're both just sophomores, so they're kind of getting the handle on things.
Yeah, and again, here's a team stocked with a lot of young players, and so we think that's a recipe for good times that are coming down the road. But when you go through that, rebuilding, if you will, or something, I mean, there's a price to pay for that. It's pretty hard to lean on that many young people and expect success early. Really, it's not apt to happen. So we know that's you have to be realistic about it and kind of suffer along with it, and then hopefully they'll turn the corner next year and can make a real splash in the league.
It seems like every time the Dragons take to the field, they have a different person in the net. Carol Brischeko's gotten a lot. Victoria Hoffman has played 5 games. Both have about the same for statistics.
Yeah, I don't think that anyone has clearly emerged there, And then, of course, they're often only as good as the rest of their defensive cast. If they have a top-line defense in front of them, obviously that makes life a lot easier. You don't really need maybe a Hope Solo to win if you've got really good balance defensively, And so I think they've played better defensively. I don't think that's probably been as big a concern as the offense.
Brischeko's made a lot of big saves, but she has yet to get a victory this season.
Yeah.
So hopefully in their next few games they can pull off a victory. In the standings, they're sitting 12th. They're not dead last, but they're kind of towards the bottom. They have a couple more games, Minot State and UMary, as you mentioned, 2 teams that are vying for playoff spots.
Yeah, and then that would seem to be out of reach for the Dragons this year, the playoffs. And there are some good teams, though, as you mentioned, League, particularly MSU Mankato. Winona's very talented in that. So they will go on and carry the conference banner into regional and hopefully national play.
The Dragons could potentially be playing upset and affecting those playoff spots. So we'll hope that at home they can bring one more victory home and shake things up in the conference.
Yeah, and if you could end with a victory too, there's something about that. That's kind of a going away present for your seniors, but probably more than that, that really helps in your off-season stuff. I've noticed that over the years. If you finish with a victory in your last football game or whatever, something, it just seems to make the off-season much more enjoyable, for the returning players. And that would really be nice to send those young ladies off with a win, and then for all the players coming back, it puts a little extra spring in their step and makes that conditioning in the winter seem a little more tolerable, I guess.
A quick look at volleyball. This team is in the strongest Division II volleyball conference, arguably, in the nation. They're 12-11 overall, but only 4-10 in the conference.
Yeah, that's very unusual. Normally, the MSU volleyball is certainly one of the sport is one of the real strongholds in the athletic department. There's still, a quality team, as you mentioned, 12-11. It's really, really kind of misleading because the league is so top-heavy. At one time, I think it's 6 teams, in the top 10, something like that, different teams. And obviously, Southwest Minnesota State has been ranked number 1. Concordia of St. Paul's won, I don't know how many, 5 or 6 championships in a row, national titles. They're number 2, and there's just team after team. And now, so the Dragons have lost 5 straight. A lot of very close matches. A lot of them have come down to match point. A couple times, I was over there Tuesday. They had about 8 chances at match point to win it. But it got away, much like the Cardinals in baseball a year ago down their last strike in it. And this weekend, a couple very tough, frustrating losses at home. So there's really a thin line between a lot of those teams in our league. And unfortunately for the Dragons right now, 4-10 in the conference with 5 straight losses. And the reality is that they will not make the playoffs. I think the top 8 get into the conference tournament. And that certainly was a very logical goal at the beginning of the year, but it's kind of slipped away. And I know it's very disheartening for the coaches and for the players, and when you try and say this isn't that bad a team, and it certainly isn't, but the league is a monster, and it's just kind of eating us up right now.
7 different teams in the NSIC have been ranked in the top 25 this year, which is crazy. That includes Augustana, who defeated the Dragons 2 matches ago. But in that match, Katie Ness got her 2,000th career dig.
Yes, and also she's been a conference defensive player of the week, I think 6 times. those are zany numbers, and particularly maybe for a losing team, because to be honest, a lot of times you might not get the consideration that a team is winning. But I think it shows what the league thinks of her, what other coaches, and she's been terrific on defense for the Dragons this year. And there's other players as well, but she has certainly more than done her job.
She has 568 digs this season, career high, 2,068 in her career. That is an incredible number.
Yeah, she's been a real anchor for us defensively, and there are other, Heidi Lensing and Annie Palmquist have probably been the offensive leaders for us. So, we felt good about the personnel going into the year. Again, I don't want to overuse this, but it is something of a young team, particularly on the front line. We're relying on a lot of young players in that. So, but there are veterans around, and so the Dragons, just kind of have to fight through this if they will. There's still a lot of matches left. 5 of the last 6 are at home. That's another thing that kind of got in the way of this, 12-11 record, and particularly the 4-10 conference record. Lots of away matches to begin the year. So we got tons of them coming up at home. It might, however, be a little too late to get in the playoffs, but they'll have the comfort of playing at Alec Nemzik Hall beginning with a couple this weekend.
You mentioned Palmquist and Lensing, both with over 250 kills this year, so hopefully they'll be able to split their last 6 matches and have a respectable season.
Yeah, and I think with a couple of matches at home coming up, and as I mentioned, they're still, I know they feel that they are so close, to being certainly a playoff kind of team. And, when we've played the very best teams in the league, a lot of times it comes down to a mistake or two. Experience shows a little bit. So this is one team I feel some real empathy for, because at first glance, if you'd look at it and see 12-11, 4-10, you might be taken aback by it and might even wonder what happened to the program, because, again, it's been one of our strongest programs for years. I think it still is, but the reality, it is what it is, and there's been a lot of tough losses in that. But here's a team you talk about, you want to finish strong. Boy, these guys would love to atone for this a little bit and really to show how good they are.
Youth and tough nationally ranked opponents seems to be the conversation every time we sit down. Thanks for joining me, Larry.
Glad to.
When we come back, we'll take a look at NDSU sports. Welcome back. I'm joined now by SUTV sports reporter Morgan Lubin. Now, Morgan, since the last time we spoke, the Bison football team has played 3 games. They were at home for homecoming against Youngstown State. Number 3 team versus number 1 team in the nation. It was kind of a blowout.
Yeah, Youngstown State really didn't even show up to play, you could say. It was 48-7. That's a tough day. Not a lot of teams make a living in the Fargo Dome against the Bison defense, but Youngstown State coming in at number 3. Thought they'd play a little better than they did. Bison D, give them credit, they shut them down pretty good.
After that, the Bison stayed at home and they took on Indiana State. Some called it a trap game, and that's kind of what it ended up being.
Yeah, definitely the feeling in press row, you and I were both up there, is that it was a trap game. Maybe the Bison were still lingering on that homecoming win that they had against Youngstown State. Brock Jensen, that offense came out extremely flat. That's never good. That's Brock's worst game here as a Bison. 3 interceptions, 2 of them returned for touchdowns. It was just bad all around on the Bison offense part. The Bison defense, on the other hand, they only held them to 3 points, but they ended up with 17. 2 of those interceptions were pick 6, like I said. So Bison defense was there. Bison offense, not quite.
Now, the defense definitely showed up in the game they played this weekend. They went down to Sioux Falls to take on USD, and once again, the Bison opponents just didn't even show up.
This is why the Bison are number 1 in the Power Gridiron Index polls right there, 54-0 over the Coyotes of USD. Jensen coming off that his worst game as a Bison against Indiana State came back huge, 15 for 21. That's just good to see. Now the Bison looks like they're rolling again here.
Now, Jensen in that game against the Coyotes, with the passing yardage he got, is now second all-time at NDSU for career passing yards. 1,407 yards this season already.
Yeah, Brock's played good other than that Indiana State game. Huge reason why we beat Youngstown State was because of Brock Jensen. Our run game was there as well. But Brock, we didn't have a jury that game. We just had Crockett. Crockett played outstanding, but Brock Jensen to Zach Vra to Ryan Smith to Nate Moody now is getting in that touchdown action. Brock played great. On the other hand, at versus Indiana State here, he, like I said, just wasn't good for Brock.
Now in that game in Sioux Falls, the Coyotes had 76 total yards of offense, 17 rushing yards in the entire game, and only 4 first downs. That's the second time this season the Bison defense has held a team under 100 total yards in the game.
Yeah, the Bison defense really showed up to play last Saturday in Sioux Falls. Grant Olson, Cole Jurek, and the gang, they came out ready to go. You better believe that they had a bad taste in their mouth losing to Indiana State the week before, and they came out hot.
Their next game, they come back home. They're taking on a Southern Illinois team who is ranked number 1 in the Missouri Valley Conference. They are actually ranked above the Bison by a half game, being 4-1. Last year, this game was a 9-3 win. The Bison didn't get a first down until the third quarter.
Yeah, the Bison offense is going to be huge. It's been huge all year. As we saw with the Indiana State game, how the offense goes, the Bison go, the defense is going to be great. You know that. The defense held them to 3 points last year. You can make an argument that our defense is better this year. Marcus Williams, Grant Olson, and the gang are going to be ready to go. We'll see what kind of Bison offense shows up. It looks like Brock Jensen, John Crockett, Samuel Jury, and the gang got their mojo back last week.
Now, talking about that Bison defense, the Bison are ranked number 1 in the nation in a lot of defensive categories. This is FBS as well as FCS. Scoring defense, total defensive yards, defensive third downs. Their defense is arguably the best defense in the nation.
Yeah, you can make a case for that. I wouldn't put them up there with LSU or Alabama or anything like that because obviously the Bison don't play teams up to that caliber. Even that loss to Indiana State, the Bison held them to 3 points, but Indiana State wasn't known for their offense. Indiana State was known for their great defense, ranked number 3, and that showed as they held the Bison offense to 14 points. You can make a case that Youngstown State had a great offense. Earlier in the year, and the Bison held them to 7 out. But now you see that Youngstown State's actually struggling the rest of the way through the Missouri Valley. So now you kind of make an argument, how big of an impressive win was that for the Bison? But things are going well now after that game in Sioux Falls.
This game against the Salukis should be a big one for the Bison. The Missouri Valley is really a toss-up with a lot of teams with only 1 or 2 losses. But the Bison have won their last 9 games against nationally ranked opponents.
Yeah, and you see the standings there with the Bison. They're 3-1, just one game back, half game back. You can make the argument to Southern Illinois, and that's going to be a huge game this weekend for sure. But Indiana State sitting at the top, obviously the team that beat the Bison. I don't see them getting through the rest of the Missouri Valley the way that the Valley is beating each other up. And you got to believe that the Bison are going to be have another chance to take that Missouri Valley championship home.
Now, moving on to volleyball. Volleyball had a 5-game homestand in the middle of this month. They went 4-1 on that homestand, 3-0 against teams in the Summit League.
Yeah, Bryn Joki and Megan Lambertson really carried that team. Andrew Henning, the libero, played great. Had a ton of assists through that 5 games. But you really gotta point the fingers to a great job by Bryn Joki and Megan Lambertson.
Speaking of Bryn Joki and Megan Lambertson, in that last game of the homestand against Drake, both of them had 18 kills in the match.
Yeah, like I said, the seniors, Bryn Joki and Megan Lambertson, have been playing great. And kind of like the Bison offense, the football offense with Brock Jensen, how they go, how Brock goes, the Bison offense goes. Kind of like that with the volleyball team, how Bryn and how Megan go. That's really what they rely on. They're 2 seniors.
Now, their latest 2 games, they were on the road trying to avenge losses from earlier in the season against IUPUI and Western Illinois. They lost again to IUPUI, but they're sitting 2nd in the Summit League. They defeated Western Illinois and got some revenge there.
Yeah, at least the Bison had a rough Friday night at IUPUI as they see that they lost the match 3-1. But to turn around the very next night at Western Illinois and come away with a 3-1, that's outstanding. That's going to give the Bison more momentum. To come out of that road trip with a 50-50 split, I'd say it's all right.
Now, they come back home again this weekend. They're taking on Fort Wayne on Friday. Fort Wayne is the number 1 team in the Summit League. And then they take on an Oakland team on Saturday that has the exact same they've won the exact same amount of games.
Right, and I mean, all eyes are going to be on that Fort Wayne game Friday. Obviously, the #1 team in the Summit League. But I'm actually looking forward to Saturday night when they take on Oakland. You know, both teams tied for around 4th, 5th place there in the Summit. That's going to be it's going to be great to watch.
If we look at the Summit League rankings, the Bison have 5 games left in the Summit League. They're in a 3-way tie for 4th place. The top 4 teams make the tournament. Now, the Bison have won the tournament the last 3 years running, so for them to not even make the tournament would be huge.
Yeah, especially when the tournament is here in Fargo at the BBF. For them not to be in it, that would be a shame. But they are tied for 4th right now. Like I said, they play Oakland, who they're tied with right now. One of the 3 teams they're tied with. That's going to be huge implications. And now they get Fort Wayne at home. Fort Wayne has struggled a little bit, pretty good for the most part. But to get them at home, it's going to be better for the Bison to play them on the road, obviously.
The last time NDSU played Fort Wayne, it was a very close 3-2 match, so we could see that there. The tournament starts November 16th with the semis at 5 and 7:30, and we hope to see the Bison there. It would definitely be nice to see them again.
Yeah, it would, but the Bison, we can't look that far ahead for the Bison volleyball team. They definitely have to do some work between now and then, especially this weekend against Fort Wayne and Oakland.
Moving ahead to soccer now. Soccer took on Kansas City, and they've been winning a lot. They've stayed doing very well in the Summit League.
Yeah, they have. Soccer, first year under Mark Cook, I mean, they're doing pretty decent. A lot of double overtime games for the Bison. They're in the game. We'll see how they come down the stretch.
2 games ago, they played South Dakota. They lost 3-2. It was a game that they definitely should have won. That's South Dakota's only win in the conference this season. But then they rebounded against Kansas City. Anisha Kinnerath had her team-leading 5th goal. Megan Johnston got her first career goal, and they won that one 2-1.
Yeah, they definitely let that one get away to USD. You never want to lose to a team that didn't have a win in the Summit League until then. But good job to rebound and come back and win the next.
Looking at the standings, soccer is sitting in 4th place right now. They have their last game this Sunday against Omaha. If the Bison win that game against Omaha, they guarantee themselves at least 4th place in the Summit League.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, I don't have to say that it's a big game because you just described the implications. But it's really win or go home at this point for the Bison soccer team. For the most part, I mean, they can get lucky and have maybe a couple other teams lose to get them in. But win or go home right now for the soccer team on Sunday.
Now, if Omaha wins that game and then they win their last game of the season, they'll jump the Bison and they will be the ones that are making the playoffs.
Yeah, huge game for the Bison. They got to take down Omaha on Sunday.
Now, after Sunday, the tournament starts on November 2nd. The semis will be that day in Brookings, South Dakota.
Yeah, and you really got to look at, maybe even the South Dakota State team to, they're going to be tough in Brookings at home. It's definitely going to be tough. You got to believe that they could potentially be the favorites.
Last season, the Bison made the tournament. They lost against Oakland in a very hard-fought match, 2-1. They're looking to improve upon that this year and actually win the tournament and go on to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, well, first they got to get into the tournament, obviously. We can't look quite that far ahead. All eyes are on Sunday right now against Omaha.
Thanks, Morgan. When we come back, we are going to take a look at some professional sports.
Jitters is your home for quality coffee drinks. Whether you crave an espresso, iced coffee, mocha, or macchiato, Jitters has just what you need. Now featuring breakfast foods like caramel rolls, bagels, and more, be sure to get your day started right. Located on 12th Avenue North, Jitters has a friendly, relaxed atmosphere with Wi-Fi capability to get all of your studying done on time. Get your fix only at Jitters.
Welcome back. I'm joined once again by Morgan Lubin. Now, Morgan, the Giants made it to the World Series in dramatic fashion. They're going to take on the Tigers this week. World Series Game 1 is Wednesday night. It should be a great matchup.
Yeah, it should. I mean, they squeaked by the Cardinals. The Cardinals were up 3-2 in that series, then they went back to San Fran for 6 and 7. Squeaked by Game 6, Game 7, put a butt whooping on the Cardinals, beat them 9-0 in pouring rain out there in San Fran. They actually won, the World Series back in 2010. It was only 2 years ago that the Giants, won it, and 2 years later, here they are against the Tigers, who haven't won it since 1984. So looking forward to this series.
Now, the Giants were down to the Reds 2-0. They were down to the Cardinals 3-1. They've won 6 straight games where if they would have lost, they would have gone home. On the other hand, the Tigers swept the Yankees, and they haven't played in 6 days.
Yeah, the Tigers, sometimes you have to wonder if they're going to be rusty. I mean, such a dominant performance over the Yankees. Obviously, with the sweep, had a longer break. That can be good, it can be bad. You got to look, maybe they're rusty, maybe not. But with that long break, that Justin Verlander, their ace, is going to, he's going to take game 1 on Wednesday. So that kind of helps out the pitching staff a little bit. Hitters, we'll see on Wednesday, I guess.
Looking at the pitching matchup, this is only the 4th time in the history that Game 1 of the World Series will be between 2 former Cy Young winners. We'll see Barry Zito for the Giants and Justin Verlander from Detroit.
Yeah, and Barry Zito, interesting pitcher. His velocity won't get over 85, 86 miles an hour at all, even his fastball for most of the game. Justin Verlander, on the other hand, he started the All-Star game. I mean, he hit velocity of 101, 102, so definitely 2 different types of pitchers.
Verlander's been pretty unhittable this postseason. 3 games, 3 wins, 24 innings. He's got a complete game and a shutout, so it should be an interesting game there.
Yeah, it's last year's AL MVP as well, so we'll see how he follows that up.
Now looking on to the Vikings, they've played a few games since we met last. Their latest game was against the Arizona Cardinals. That was a matchup of 2 4-2 teams. The Vikings won that game. It seemed like they dominated, but their offense really struggled.
Yeah, they did. Well, you can make the argument that Christian Ponder struggled in the passing game. Adrian Peterson was back to Adrian Peterson. He hadn't been in the end zone the previous 3 or 4 weeks. He was on my fantasy team. I actually traded him away on Saturday, the game before this, and he goes for 153 yards and a touchdown, so kicking myself a little bit. But Adrian Peterson was back to being Adrian Peterson, running with force. Christian Ponder, 58 yards in the passing game. Not his best performance, obviously, but good thing Adrian Peterson was there.
Peterson hadn't scored a touchdown since week 1, but this was his second 100-yard game in the last 3 games. And like you said, Ponder, he had 1 completion for 4 yards in this entire second half.
Yeah, and they really relied on Adrian Peterson. That's obvious. Adrian Peterson is the heart and soul of the Minnesota Vikings offense. The running game is what the Vikings do best. It's what they're going to keep doing. As Adrian Peterson goes, the Vikings offense is going to go. I'm more impressed with the Vikings defense the past couple weeks, especially holding Arizona Cardinals to 14 points.
And getting that pick 6 to
Harrison Smith,
in that game. Now, looking ahead to their next game this Thursday, they take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a team that has definitely been struggling this year. The Vikings are 4-0 at home.
Yeah, and I definitely looked at the Vikings to go 5-0 at home and improve to 6-2. Tampa Bay, tough loss to New Orleans this past weekend in a shootout, 35-28. But to me, it's going to come down to that Vikings run game. Tampa Bay has trouble stopping the run. Adrian Peterson, I even looked for Percy Harvin to jump in the backfield a couple times, get some carries. He's a forceful runner, just like Adrian Peterson. Toby Gerhart maybe even playing a key role in that game. I look for that running game to carry the Vikings through.
You mentioned Peterson and Harvin. Peterson has 5 games with over 100 yards from scrimmage this year. Harvin has 4. That's number 1 and 2 in the entire NFL.
Yeah, and a lot of people think that Percy Harvin might be the best receiver in the league right now, but that's not just catching the ball. That's running the ball as well. The Vikings have put him in the backfield, and he can take it right up the gut.
Now, after Tampa Bay, the Vikings are going to take on Seattle, and they'll get another rookie quarterback. They've faced 2 rookie quarterbacks already this year in Andrew Luck and Robert Griffin III. Both of those games were their only 2 losses on the season.
Yeah, totally different offenses here, though. Andrew Luck, such a game manager, did a great job against the Vikings, really exploited that secondary. Robert Griffin III, on the other hand, that option offense they were running, he absolutely blew up the Vikings defense with his legs. And both of those teams rely on their offense for the most part, especially the Redskins. The Seattle Seahawks, on the other hand, completely different. Russell Wilson is a complete game manager. They're going to run the ball with Marshawn Lynch. Russell Wilson's been great, especially in that comeback win against the Patriots. But none of that is made possible without the Seattle Seahawks defense. Arguably, top 3 defense in the league. That's what makes the Seahawks roll.
The Seahawks have been able to beat the Patriots and the Packers this year, which were huge wins for them. If the Vikings continue to lose against rookie quarterbacks, luckily they don't play Cleveland or Miami this year, so they'll only get 3 losses on the season.
Yeah, and that'd be hopeful, I guess you can say, for the Vikings. You better believe that they don't want to lose to all 3 rookie quarterbacks that they face this year. Russell Wilson, not up to par as Andrew Luck and Robert Griffin III are. Still a good team, though.
Hopefully the Vikings can continue winning into their bye week, because after their bye week, they have a tough schedule. 2 games with Green Bay, 2 games with Chicago, and a game with Houston.
NFC North, is definitely the best conference in football right now. You can make an argument that NFC West is good as well, obviously with the 49ers, the Seahawks, the Cardinals, and the Rams. But the NFC North, the Bears are 5-1 right now. The Vikings are 5-2, haven't had their bye week yet. The Packers 4-3, a couple tough losses, but Aaron Rodgers is playing like the MVP of last year now. That could be dangerous in the last 4, 5, 6 games of the year.
And we haven't even gotten deep into conference play. The Vikings 1-0 in the conference. The Bears 1-1. Packers 2-0. Very close.
I mean, it's all going to come down to after the Vikings bye week, like you said. We got the Bears twice, we got the Packers twice, and we got Detroit once. That's going to be a tough 5 games.
Well, thank you, Morgan. On behalf of Morgan Lubin and Larry Scott, I'm Jake Cheetah, and this has been the Wildcat.